Hello, people. It's still in the morning, just a little bit more efficient than I usually am, so I got time to make these videos, and so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I've finished a book. Actually, I've finished two. This one's called First Blood, Fort Sumpter Bull Run. This one wasn't great. They didn't give me a whole shitload of information about Fort Sumpter. Apparently, it was a pretty short thing, a short affair. Not many casualties, if any. But then it moves right to the first battle of Bull Run, which the Confederates referred to as Manassas. It was the first big battle of the war. I don't think either side really knew what to expect. They both fed their troops into it piecemeal. It, was notable for people running away whenever they got outnumbered and things started to look bad on both sides. The Confederates and the Federals started to run away. The Federals actually, were pretty confident, so confident that townspeople got in their wagons and came down to watch the fighting. I think there was even like a senator that got captured at the end of it, what they call the big skedaddle, because the federal line just collapsed and they all started to run away. And another thing that it was notable for was the federal troops had brigades that were dressed in all gray, and the Confederates had brigades that were dressed in all blue. Some of these people, like they would raise a regiment or a brigade, and they would actually supply them with their own uniforms of their own design. So things weren't all the same. I think after that it kind of changed. Maybe they even instituted some rules about that. I don't know. But at the very end of the battle, when things were going bad for the federal line, up comes this brigade of rebels dressed in all blue. And so the Federals hold their fire as these men advance on them. And all of a sudden, the rebels, fire off a volley, and that's it. It sparks this thing called the Big Skedaddle. So it wasn't a huge battle. There was like 6,000 people killed, so that's not a small amount of people. But as far as the numbers go, it was much smaller than the battles to come, Antietam, Second Battle of Bull Run, etc. The federal guy that was in charge of the Army of the Potomac, his name was McDowell. And McDowell is just, not a household name. He's very forgettable, and they shit can him after that. So we move to the second one, the Coastal War, Chesapeake Bay to Rio Grande. This was a lot more interesting. I've got a lot of books, a lot of naval history books, and I find it kind of fascinating. The Federals had to blockade the Confederate ports, and that's pretty much what this is all about. Florida, Louisiana, the Carolinas. A little bit disappointingly, it does not have the battle between the Merrimack and whatever the other one was, the ironclads. There's a lot of ironclad action in here, but it doesn't have that big famous battle, so I'm going to have to look through those stupid Time Life books and see if I can find that one. This one I still have notes for. I didn't even have any notes for that other one. New Orleans, and I'm glad that it had that because I wanted some more info on New Orleans. I'm sure I'm not getting it all, but my notes here say, why not a better defense? They had two forts that guarded the entrance to New Orleans, and conventional wisdom was that a fleet could not sail past them, those forts. But several times in the war, at Vicksburg and at New Orleans and at Charleston, the Federals just went ahead and sailed past. They knew that they were going to take some casualties, maybe even lose a ship, but they just did it anyway. So it's kind of fascinating because cannon while much advanced from the shit that Mehmed the Conqueror drug up to the walls of Constantinople, canon is still in its infancy compared to what we have now. Uh, Much of it was still smoothbore. You had to fucking light a fuse on the thing. It really wasn't until like 1870, Krupp, he's the one that revolutionized canonry. Uh, the Federals end up taking New Orleans. The population there is kind of riotous, and that's Farragut is in charge of the federal naval forces. Butler is in charge of the land forces. It takes him a long time, but Grant ends up getting rid of Butler. Nobody likes Butler. That kind of moves to Charleston after that, and there's a lot of ironclad action there, which is pretty cool, but it's mixed with wooden ships, and but that's where this Fort Wagner thing is, and they had made a movie about Fort Wagner. It's an all-black brigade that assaults Fort Wagner, and tactics and weaponry at this time favored defense. If you were defending a prepared position, you definitely had the advantage. Uh, and this black regiment does not do well. Very heroic though. Uh, Moves on from that to this place in Florida, and there's a couple of other ones. Just the bombardments that the federal fleet would sit out a couple of miles from these forts and bombard them, and the fort would try to defend itself, and it was pretty cool. I enjoyed this one. I'm still working my way through these Time Life books. I don't know, I was looking at my pile of books, and I think I'm going to switch gears completely. I'm going to try and read a different one. I have like 10 more of these things to go through. I'm still not going to the bookstore, so I don't know. Thanks for watching.